Hello, this is Sarah Brosh. Welcome back to my channel. So I want to do a video. I'm going to go back to the Disgusting Yale talk at the Yale School of Medicine by Dr. Aruna Kilanani next, but I just wanted to take a brief respite from that and talk about this National Review article that was published today, that came out today, and I responded to it on Twitter, and my response to the article on Twitter on National Review's Twitter feed got a pretty big response, so I want to talk about that. So there was this National Review, and now the National Review is a conservative publication. It was founded by William F. Buckley Jr., and so it was a National Review article published today. It went up on National Review's Twitter feed today. It was written by Lois McLatchy, and she is a Brit, and she writes about Europe, what's happening in Europe, especially with respect to religious freedom and religious expression rights and infringements thereupon, especially in the midst of the ascendancy of the woke tyranny that's global at this point. So anyway, so she wrote an article, and one thing in the article that particularly grabbed my attention. So the article is about how, especially in Europe, now the European nations have pretty much across the board gotten rid of their blasphemy laws, but and I guess most recently Scotland did, like just a year ago, their last blasphemy law in the books, they officially repealed it. But what's happening now is, with the rise of hate speech laws across Europe, that what's happening is that it's a new form of blasphemy law, and it's where if you utter something that's a heresy, an affront to the woke religion, the religion of woke intersectional feminism and critical race theory, then you can actually be prosecuted for hate speech. And so that's what happened, and that's what's happening now I'm not quite sure why the lighting is sort of going crazy, but whatever, it's just an iPhone, we'll deal. But anyway, it's about getting the information across. So anyway, right now, a woman in Finland is being prosecuted. She's a former government official, she's a grandmother, and she's a Christian. And she expressed on social media that she doesn't like that her Christian church is sponsoring, like the local pride parade for LGBTQ rights, the local pride parade, or a local pride event. And so she expressed that she didn't like that. And so she is currently being prosecuted under the hate speech laws in Finland. This is crazy. All she's doing is expressing her, Christian beliefs. And so my response to National Review on their Twitter feed was to say, this is not just happening in Finland. This is what happened to me at Yale. Because so my first year, and I've already done videos about this, but my first year in the philosophy PhD program at Yale, and we had a job candidate, an evangelical black man who happened to be our only person of color job candidate for a tenure track assistant professor position in the philosophy department at Yale University. And so the other graduate students, I'll make it brief because I've done other videos about this. But anyway, so they decided to wage a campaign against this job candidate to make sure that he wouldn't be able to get the job, because years prior on an explicitly Christian website, he had expressed his belief that biblical scripture is Christian doctrine, and that includes a prohibition on sodomy, which includes a prohibition on homosexual sex. And so he regards homosexual sex as a sin, and so the other grad students said that this was anti-LGBTQ hate speech, and he shouldn't be allowed to have the job as an assistant professor in the philosophy department at Yale. And of course, because I'm a hardcore civil libertarian and a civil rights attorney and a First Amendment attorney, and I'm licensed and I practice, and I also just have common sense, and I understand what the Federal Civil Rights Act demands and what the U.S. Constitution demands, which apparently the other grad students in the philosophy department at Yale do not understand. And I put my foot down and I objected to this, and because I objected to this, this is why I was ostracized by the other grad students at Yale. They had berated me for hours at a meeting that was supposed to be about mending fences, and then they never spoke to me again. They would get up and walk out if I entered a room. They went to the Yale administration to get me disciplined or to get me expelled, and this is why the Yale administration targeted me for years for expulsion, because I stood up for the religious expression rights of an evangelical black man at Yale. And then this is also why when Lolata Siambola and Jean-Louis Renison went to the Yale administration in spring of 2018, in February of 2018 the first time, and falsely made a ludicrous false accusation against me that I had perpetrated a racist hate crime comparable to a lynching, and they did this along with the resident coordinators of my dorm at Yale, the Hall of Graduate Studies, and they did this because they wanted to avoid being punished for harassing me. And this is why the Yale administration was absolutely thrilled when Siambola and Renison came to them with this ludicrous, asinine, false accusation that I had perpetrated a racist hate crime comparable to a lynching. Yale Housing had already completely exonerated me, said I did absolutely nothing wrong. So this was Yale Grad School Dean Lynn Cooley and Yale Grad School Diversity Dean Michelle Nearin, and they were the ones that got all excited about using this as an opportunity to finally expel me, as they had wanted to do for years, for being an unwoke civil libertarian who defended the religious expression rights of an evangelical black man at Yale. So I was like, this is not just happening. National Review and Lois McLatchy, this is not just happening in Finland. This is happening in the United States. This is happening at Yale. This is exactly what happened to me. And then because I was so distraught over being ostracized and harassed, and I became a social pariah. I was persona non grata, not just in the philosophy department at Yale amongst the other grad students, but across the Yale campus. I became persona non grata, and this is why I was harassed multiple times in Yale student housing, grad student housing. And so I was so distraught that I needed mental health care, and so I went to the mental health center, the student health center there at Yale. And because the Yale administration illegally released my mental health history and my identity and a lot of personal information about me, illegally released it to my harassers and my tormentors, Lolata Siambola and Jean-Louis Renison, and the resident coordinators of the Hall of Graduate Studies, the dorm in which I lived. And so much was made of the fact that I had a mental health history at Yale, and so immediately and to this day, people continue to smear me as a dangerous psycho to try to avoid being held accountable for their participation in the witch hunt at Yale. So anyway, so all of this, I wanted to just let the National Review know this is not just happening in Finland, this is happening in the United States. This is happening at Yale. This is exactly what happened to me. And that was my first year in the philosophy PhD program at Yale, was in 2014 to 2015. So this was January, February, and then the rest of the spring of 2015 when this happened. And so that was not all that recently. And so this is not a new phenomenon. That was a number of years ago now. That happened to me. So this is not just happening in Finland. We are losing the First Amendment in the United States. We are losing our free speech rights. And hate crime legislation is a travesty. It mocks the U.S. Constitution. It mocks the First Amendment. It's a mockery of the First Amendment. And I think I'll stop there because I don't want this video to get too long. But I love you all so much, and I will have all of my fundraising links below: PayPal me, GoFundMe, and a direct link to Randazza Legal Group, my attorneys. And if you can support me, it would mean the world to me. I love you all so much. Have a great night. Bye.